Later on, Sinatra, in one of his books, said that Clift really helped him greatly with his performance. Taught him about beats as far as delivering his lines of dialogue. Talked to him about the importance of pauses. Talked to him about how you deliver a line and emphasize certain words. And he really was grateful for Clift's advice and really gave him a great deal of credit privately to his friends that he really couldn't have done it without him. And then we have this. One of the iconic moments in American cinema. I sometimes hate talking about moments like this because you don't want to ruin it. It's just burned in our minds, it's burned in our memories as one of those great, great moments. And it's been parodied, of course, time and time again. I know it's popped up in Shrek 2. I think in Airplane it pops up. Did Carol Burnett do a bit once on her show, I think? Yeah. Initially, this scene was supposed to be shot standing up. There was no supposed to be laying down or anything like that. And it was at Lancaster's suggestion. He said, well, why don't we try it laying down in the surf? To which they said, well, okay, let's give this a shot. When you read about this moment in the book, it really doesn't come off this well. I mean, I think, if I remember correctly, Jones complains about them being sandy and wet. The character's thinking this, and of course, there's none of that here. This was a scandalous moment. I know it's probably hard to imagine at this late date, but it was a scandalous moment in the movies. And they were still under the control of the Production Code Office, which at that time was run by Joseph Breen. And if you notice this sequence, when you watch the movie, it's done very choppily. And if that's not a word, I'm not sure, but it's very choppy. We see them kiss, and then we cut away to something that's happening in the bar with Frank and Monty, and then we go back to them. It seems as though Breen wanted this, or they thought that they could get away with having this scene by not showing it as a prolonged sequence. If they show it in just little bits, maybe we can sneak some of this by and it won't be as scandalous. Well, it didn't quite work. There were still areas, censor boards around the country, and there are many prints that went around with this entire sequence cut out. Just gone. Zinnemann said later on that he heard, and he had actually found some prints that he had seen, and he noticed that the scene seemed choppy or short, and he went back and he found out by asking people that projectionists in local theaters would actually clip off the tails of this scene to keep the frames as souvenirs. So that's just how scandalous this was. Lancaster was asked about this later in the 1980s, and he said, I was cold and I was wet. That's what he said. Deborah Carr later said that she knew that there was something going on between them. She said, let me see if I can find this quote here. She said about their chemistry, that there was a chemistry that happened between us. I wasn't conscious of it, and neither was he, but he had such a good and forceful attitude towards his part, and I toward mine. Lancaster later confessed to a few friends that he and Carr had a rather torrid, brief affair during the filming of the movie. And keeping that in mind, if you go and watch it tonight, I think you see a certain subtext there within those scenes, keeping that in mind. And there it was. This is the final poster that was used for the release. And everything really, with all the difficulties as far as getting this thing into a script form, as far as getting on location, as far as casting, really the 41 days went rather smoothly. Zinnemann was very happy with the final production. He thought that he really had a hit on his hands. He thought everything was going to go well. And then here comes Harry Cohn again, who you see he's sitting below the camera here. And he decided that he was going to open the film on August 5th. Now, nowadays, summer is the big time for the big blockbusters, and that's where movie studios make their hay. Used to be not that way. Major films were not opened in the summer, and everyone was just shocked that he decided he was going to open this film on Broadway at the Capitol Theater on August 5th, with the Capitol Theater having no air conditioning. They thought that he had lost his mind. And there was no official premiere either. There was no red carpets. There weren't any celebrities there. There weren't any limousines. The movie opened August 5th with very little fanfare. On the evening of August 5th, at around 11 o'clock at night, Zinnemann got a phone call in California from Marlene Dietrich, who was in New York at the time. on that evening. He said that he barely knew her, was surprised to get the call, and she said that he had an absolute sensation on his hand. She was down there. She said that there was a line around the block, that the theater was just bursting at the seams, and that they actually had scheduled a 1 a.m. showing of the film, which they hadn't scheduled initially. And Zinnemann was just stunned by this and said, how could this be with such little publicity? And Dietrich said, people can smell a hit, and they can smell this one. And she was right. It was a huge hit. It ended up earning 8 Academy Awards, ended up earning $17 million on its initial release. Quite a good return on that $2.5 million that was spent during the production, and basically changed the career of most everyone who was involved with it. Won 8 Academy Awards, as I said, the most since Gone with the Wind. Donna Reed there with her Oscar. And of course Sinatra, he won as well, and as I said earlier, changes everything for him. Lancaster and Carr were both nominated. They both lost to, Lancaster lost to William Holden for his turn in Stalag 17, and then Audrey Hepburn won the Oscar that year for Roman Holiday. Clift was really upset over the results of the Academy Awards. He and Lancaster were both nominated for Best Picture, and the theory is that they ended up splitting the vote between them for Holden to win. He really did, he was concerned about being accepted by his peers, by being accepted by the Hollywood community, and apparently after losing, he said to some friends, what is it that I have to do to prove to them that I can act? So perhaps there was a bit of insecurity there, obviously unwarranted. There's the re-release poster. Again, they re-released this thing, I think, at least 3 times before it then ended up on TV where it was shown. It's shown quite regularly. There is a, just want to make sure I've got back. There is a rumor that Jones is in the movie. I talked to Kylie about this last night. I have stumbled across it in an article and then in a book that I'd read in preparing for this, and I also mentioned it to her last year when she was in Champaign, that apparently James Jones is in the movie. I talked to her last night. She says, you know, I don't know. She says, I was trying to get a hint as to where she thought he might appear, and she said, I'm not sure. She said, when you said that last year, I got to thinking, and she said, I remember my father mentioning it once, but I don't know where he is. Can we go to, so I went home last night, and I rented the movie, and I think I found him. I think.
Well, boxing finals next month, December 15th. Still got time to help us win the championship. Are you proud to be in this company or not?
Hang on, I'll get it. Did you see him? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I like I say, in most photographs from this era, he has a mustache. And to be an enlisted man here, he would have had to have been clean shaven.